Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. All right, well, we usually start this podcast out with a question, but instead I'm going to brag. So deal with it.
Cool.
That's pretty much where we're
Are
at.
you bragging on yourself or what's going on here?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of bragging on all of us. I just happen to be the recipient of the information, but
Nice. We'll accept that.
yeah, I was stopped. I was at the Organic Association of Kentucky's annual conference this past week, and I was stopped because somebody heard my voice and they said, "Alexis?" And I was like, "I don't know you." And they were like, "Are you Alexis, a podcast Alexis?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I felt super cool. And they were so excited and told me how much they loved the podcast. So shout out to those people. Two of them, actually. So it's really a brag on all of us. I just happen to be the voice involved at that
Maybe
moment.
we should rename it Podcast Alexis.
Just
the Podcast Alexis show.
At some point, we need to add the video content on our YouTube channel so that people don't have to ask. They'll just know and say, "Hey, Alexis," instead of, "Hey, are you the podcast Alexis?"
I mean, I don't know. That's how you get like kidnapped, I think. Is
Yeah.
Oh, we're definitely.
I don't want to be
taken.
taken. I don't want to be taken.
If it takes me away from my responsibilities, I may be up for it. I'm just saying.
Was any other person's parent like that crazy one who was like, "You cannot have your name on your backpack because someone will steal you"?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They know
But
your
anyways,
name,
and by the way, we have a guest on today. So Emily is on with us again from the Center for Crop Diversification because we're talking about CSAs today. And as a avid CSA lover, I'm very excited about that. So if you don't know what CSAs are or you want to know more about what they are, this is a great episode for you. Also, don't get kidnapped. So that's my plan for today.
Important safety tip.
Important safety tip, don't get kidnapped. But anyways, welcome to the Horticulture Podcast and welcome, Emily. We're so glad to have you.
Awesome. Thanks you all. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy you've not been kidnapped.
Me too.
How's the weather where you are?
Where are
Actually sunny for once.
Mm-hmm.
Actually sunny.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're in the same city, but
I was gonna say, I was like, are you all in the same
microclimates?
general
As
area?
we all know, Brett is in a microclimate and he can grow certain flowers that Alexis is jealous of. Not to bring up old business, sorry, Alexis.
It's not that I can't grow them, okay?
It's
not well.
It is that you all have them
okay.
for me.
I see.
It's a timing, not a quality thing, Brett.
Ray said it, not me. That's true.
But anyway.
I always have to start stuff. Yeah. So CSAs, what the heck is a CSA? Not everyone listening today may be familiar with that term. So what's everybody's definition? Because I know that the definition can be really specific depending on where you're at and what you're doing, or it can be a little bit more broad. So what is a CSA? I know that's what we're talking about today.
Who is it? Emily? Emily, how do you define CSA?
Yeah, I'll go. I always, like when I'm explaining to someone who has no idea what it is, which happens kind of frequently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's like the very traditional idea of what a CSA is. And CSA stands for, there's like a couple different ways people explain it, but community shared agriculture or community supported agriculture. And essentially what it is kind of the customer sharing the risk of the farm with the farmer by buying, a subscription to the farm's produce or products, whatever it is they're selling, up front at the beginning of the season, which is really cool for farmers. They know exactly how much money they're going to get throughout the season instead of kind of the week to week, changes at the farmer's market. Like, let's say it's pouring down rain one day or something, no one comes to the farmer's market. It just kind of mitigates that risk. Yeah, I would say that's like the most traditional way to think about it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think you pointed out something that a lot of people forget about because usually when you're describing a CSA, like, I just kind of say like, oh, it's like a subscription, like a weekly or a monthly or, kind of whatever it is. And every farm's got a sort of a different version of CSAs now. But what you pointed out is so important is it's that the customer, the client, is in it with the farmer, right? So there's no guarantee that you're going to get tomatoes every week because the tomatoes might die. And that's like kind of part of it. You're going to get your money's worth, or at least the farmer usually tries. Maybe they have an off week. I know I've been a part of a CSA where they were like, hey, we had torrential flooding, and so we have nothing for you this week, but we're going to extend your season an additional week. So you always get what you pay for, but it's, you might get a lot more yellow squash one week than you really thought you might. And so you're really mitigating that risk. And I think that's something a lot of people forget when they join a CSA. They think of it more like a subscription like Amazon might do, but that's not exactly
It's
what
not exactly guaranteed, like the quantity of A, B, and C is not exact. You don't know that up front in a CSA typically, do you? Like you said, the variety may vary what you're getting, because I guess you are working with seasonal fresh stuff, and you're working with things like, I don't know, the environment and weather and
Just the
stuff. And,
environment.
and
No
that's
big
tough. And I find that most CSA farms, they grow like a lot of different things. So you may encounter stuff in your CSA share that week that you may not have encountered before, because from my experience, CSA farms, they do grow lots and lots of great variety of things, and if one thing fails, they usually plan on that by having something to substitute in. So yeah, you may get a surprise from week to week in
Welcome to
certain cases.
kohlrabi. That was
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
kohlrabi is like
Exactly.
always the
Exactly.
substitute, even
That
though
is
it's
a
great.
that is a good example. Yeah, that's a common one. So it's not like with a CSA you can exactly pre-order an exact set amount of certain things. Typically, that's not the case, is it? With a CSA, it's that you're buying we're kind of, you're paying forward into that farm, a share into that farm. So it's just whatever they
An investment.
produce fresh and locally. Yeah, an investment. And it sounds like there's some benefits for, of course, consumers, because you get a high quality, locally grown product. But the benefit for the farm would be what? Real question.
Josh, Brett,
Shared
and Brett
risk.
have both worked
The
on
economist, I'm
CSA.
surprised the economist didn't jump all over that. The
I would have
marketers and the
said
economists.
I would have said shared risk, and I like the way that you
Yeah.
frame that, Ray, of like an investment. Right? Is that the grower sells essentially a group of shares and takes that investment money to then grow the product. That is like the
Yeah.
most kind of abstracted definition, because it doesn't just have to be vegetables, right? It can be
Yeah, that's a
fruit.
great
It can
point.
be animal products. It can be a lot of different things.
Eggs, meat, flowers. I mean, I know, CSAs that are flowers, I guess, Alexis, isn't there? So it's just not for traditional fruits and veggies. Yeah, that's a great point, Josh, that it could be a lot of different things. And it must be nice. I know one of the motivations for this movement happening in the US, it seemed like, is that farmers, it costs money to produce things. And a lot of times you're making an investment up front that you're not going to get paid for up front. So this
Mhm.
helps farmers because they get a revenue stream while they're producing a crop, and that's an awesome benefit. So benefit to both consumers and farmers, it seems like. And that's one of the things that I like about this. And I know there's a certain amount of education involved in CSAs when you're working with people. Emily, you said there's two different ways, community supported ag, and I hadn't heard it as much, but you said community shared agriculture, which I like that version actually, because that's a good talking point to let people know, exactly what they're, buying into. So I really like the shared version of that. And I haven't heard that very often, community shared ag, because you're buying that shared, but that's an interesting take on that. So lots of benefits to consumers and the farmers. I like it.
Can
It's an
can
interesting
everybody
model.
tell that Ray has had a lot of caffeine today?
Oh,
Because that
yes.
was like a monologue of, a thought, like all great, all great. I'm not picking on you, but man, you
Rapid
just
fire.
rolled through that. Yeah. As he drinks more coffee.
Yes. This is
One,
not a good idea. I have not reached my peak yet, folks. I'm still climbing. I'm still climbing. Yeah, but CSAs have always fascinated me because of their benefits and all the complexities that can be. I mean, they can be as simple as you want them to be, in essence, or they can be, a bit more complex in the way that you kind of deliver the CSA.
well, I think one thing to note too, that a lot of the description so far describes CSAs. Many of them still exist in that way, but CSAs as they particularly existed back maybe in the like late 90s and 2000s, and back to the 80s in the United States, community supported agriculture many of the farms had a non-negotiable, you have to come out and work on the farm component
Right.
that is all but vanished in the modern
Yeah, that's a
landscape.
good
Oh
point, Brett.
yeah.
And
Yeah, the
another
worker
component of it
share.
too that is work share. And then another component of it that's changed, and we can debate good or bad. Consumer economists say good, is that the you take what you get model has
Mhm.
faded into the background in terms of at least a lot of the farms that we work with here in the state. I'll say from my own personal experience as a CSA member for the last however many years, there was a time back in the 2010 where it was
Mhm.
a take what you get. And my shares that we have these past couple of years, it's fully customizable within the range of options that they have available. And so, for instance, if I don't really like bell peppers, I can swap bell peppers for an extra pound of tomatoes within
Oh,
this online system. And so it is, I think, and this is something maybe we can talk about as we bridge into CSA week and other phenomena, but with CSA shifting in that way, I think to me it's a sign of adaptations by producers
Mhm.
in order to capture a larger share of the market. Because the reality that we kind of know from the research that we've done is that dyed in the wool CSA customers are a relatively small market segment.
Mhm.
And they're for weirdos like me and maybe some like spirit.
fringe case.
Right. People who believe in the values of
Right. Yeah.
sharing risk.
Psychos, basically. But that in order to get access to people who are used to being able to go to the grocery store and pick from several options, that has sprung up. And we've seen tremendous growth in CSAs in Kentucky over the last few years, interest in them, promotion of them. And there's some events coming up that Emily's going to talk about a little bit later. But that was just a little wrinkle in the CSA picture that, and the other thing that's happened too, along with the change in week to week choosing, is people offering more and more short term
Mhm.
shares. So you can get a
Mhm.
4 week or an
Yeah.
8 week, whereas
Sure.
I'm used to 22, 26 week is the standard or whatever, different size shares. You can get an extra large if you like lots of vegetables. If you're just a single person who's trying to mix it up, you can get a small share, and then things all the way in
Mhm.
between. So it has radically changed. I was kind of shocked the first time I was able to customize a share, but as a consumer, I must say I kind of liked it because maybe I
Oh
want
Sure.
to
yeah.
have a whole bunch of, maybe I love bell peppers and I want to make stuffed peppers for a party.
Right.
I can get more of those in my share.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it is kind of this blended model now.
It strikes me as something that's more like to me that is more of a subscription box than like what the CSA system sprung up as
Hmm.
originally,
Yeah.
right? Like it's more like the Amazon model where it's like I
Mhm.
want a streaming service and I want to a la carte everything,
Hmm.
and it's more focused on the convenience of a subscription.
And before we move on, one more shout out of obscure, not necessary things to say from me, which is sort of my main contribution here. I want to
Nice.
give a shout out to the cultural frames that supported this besides the U.S. So it sprung up primarily in like the northern part of the
Mm,
United States, with some people coming out of like Scandinavian traditions and Scandinavian heritage, and like a certain cultural appreciation for cooperation and
mm,
shared governance or something like that. And then there's also this whole parallel system. I think it's called Teikei, Teikei in Japan.
yeah.
That is a very similar kind of ethos. And so we didn't invent this in America, but damn it, we like to say we did.
We'll take credit for it if it's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, Brett. You mentioned, some of the innovations going on with CSAs, and that's something I'm really interested in now. Is any component of a CSA that provides, excuse me, choice? Uh, why is that springing up? Is it just because the online tools are getting easier and better? Or,
Mhm.
I mean, I love the fact that, this component of where you can go on almost like Josh said, an online shopping experience, which is not what CSA started as, but I love that innovation that CSAs are moving towards. Love that. But I wonder just what's driving that other than it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to talk on and on, but I think technology is a big part of the picture, and I think that expanding into other consumer markets and making CSA more palatable to more people, because
Mhm.
most growers are looking to grow their shares. The turnover rate can be as high as 50% or more in some cases. You get people who sign up for a year, realize it's not for them, so it means you're constantly needing to replace. And I think in that regard, you get out, you exhaust the true blue, dyed in the wool, as I
Yeah.
said before, CSA customers. And so how do we get access to more people, or wean them onto the CSA model? Emily, you have any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm curious actually. I have a question for you, Brett, as like a CSA customer. Like if every week is customizable, like for you, what's the benefit of signing up for a CSA instead of going to the farmers market every week? You know, if it's essentially you're picking out your stuff every week.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's a number of reasons. One is I do on some level view it as a practice of some kind of values. I like the idea of getting the money out of my hands early when seed costs and fertilizer costs and equipment repair costs happen during that early window. I'll come back to one major reason I've continued, but I think another reason for me is it helps a little bit with choice paralysis, because it's not like my basket is your basket come or your box whatever comes pre-populated with stuff, and there's some weeks where I'm like, yeah, let's go for what they assigned, and other weeks I just swap things out. And so there is still a preformed share that you can adjust, which is much more helpful, and it pushes me to get things that I maybe wouldn't proactively get at a farmer's market. I think it encourages me to spend a little bit more money and get more. So I think I'm getting a better value relative to the farmer's market, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is to some extent and locking in that. Those are two big reasons. I like the idea of it's a 3-minute stop to pick something up versus
yeah.
from as much as I support farmers markets and love the vibe. It's a big confession. I actually do not like going to farmers markets. I don't like.
Brett, I cannot believe it.
You're not
I
a
don't know
big
what you're talking
shopping
about.
guy.
Breaking news: Brett Wolf canceled from Horticulture Podcast. Um, but the other reason is we have at UK we have this really nice voucher program, which will our health and wellness people. Shout out Vanessa Oliver, Jody Ensman, Tim Woods, who's been on the podcast recently. A whole crew of them and Brooke at Oak and others have worked to put this voucher program. Katie at Oak. Now I'm thinking of all the people I didn't shout out who have worked to put this voucher program together, where I get. So like last year, let's say my share cost $750. I actually get a $200 voucher from our HR department, because in theory, if I'm eating vegetables, I'm going to cost them less on medical bills and other things as well, off of that. And so my out of pocket then becomes $500 or $600 or whatever the balance is. And so that's another reason that has really confirmed my desire to keep going with it. So those are my main reasons. But when I first started, I think it was because I thought I was cool.
Mhm. Well,
Well,
and the
I feel
health savings, if they knew you were picking it up on a motorcycle with no helmet, they probably wouldn't give you the discount.
They don't know what they don't know can't hurt them, you know.
yeah, that's awesome. I know in the fall we interviewed some people that participate in the UK CSA voucher program, and something that they talked about that I hadn't really thought about was like it's this like really cool kind of like forced opportunity to be creative with your food, you know, that we
Yeah.
just like don't like, you know, I go to the grocery store, I get the same like 20 things every time I go
Mhm.
essentially. Because I'm not like forced to like get out of my comfort zone at all. But like when you have the CSA, it's like a really cool opportunity to like, yeah, I don't know, just like get creative in the kitchen and like maybe you find something you like that you've never tried, you know, which I really liked
Right.
thinking about it that way.
Yeah. No,
Definitely.
there's a lot of logic to that because like cooking is like a pretty creative process, right? And it's kind of like the difference between like you looking at what paint you have versus going to the paint store and deciding what am I going to paint, right? Like with all the colors of the rainbow,
Yeah,
or
so
I just
true.
have a handful of certain things. So like, where does that lead me?
Yeah,
Just
that's a
to
really good point.
just to clarify real quick for those people who are like, what are this UK voucher system? And maybe to encourage them if they have an employer who might be interested in this. So UK, of course, has a CSA from their research farm, but they also support other local farms that do I think it's like 20 weeks is the minimum or 25 weeks is the minimum CSA. And so basically, University of Kentucky gives employees a voucher. It's a couple $100s, right? Like it's been a few years since I've been a part of it, but for employees sort of around the state now, they've grown it to be able to buy a CSA from one of the approved farms that they are working with. And so it's really nice, and it's through kind of like our health insurance type situation. And I know that there is some other organizations, employers who are looking at that as part of their health and wellness. So where you get
There are
benefits.
several others who have done it too,
Yeah.
not just UK, but
Just like, just like they might give you a discount on a gym membership, right? Because in theory, it cuts down on, you needing to go to the doctor and things. Same concept, healthy food, is good for you, makes you better, all that jazz. So that's just kind of an update on that. I almost had I had a thought, and maybe it's too big of random thought to talk about today, but we call CSA, we say community shared agriculture or community supported agriculture, and it almost feels like those might be one or the other these days. Like community shared, maybe in my brain goes back to kind of the older way where you get what you get and you're in it with that farmer, for the long haul. You get, and maybe you do some work on the farm as part of it, versus community supported agriculture almost feels like a newer wave where there's more selection, variety selection, things like that. So I wonder how that will change. Like as technology, will we use one term more than the other, or is that just too big of a silly idea that nobody actually will change? But that they seem different to me, right? Like this, and the way
Yeah,
we use
sure.
that S seems very different.
Or will it transition fully into consumer supported agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just back to the old model of no risk shared?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
definitely changed over time.
if you're asking about the power of semantics, you've come to the right place, Alexa.
I figured I did. Semantics was the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Well, I think for me at least, community supported agriculture to me was the name that what when I started into it, and so it has that historical cachet. But the difference between shared and supported
Mm-hmm.
is kind of interesting and important to discuss. And there's a part of me, or a part of the argument, that would say to call any of this community supported agriculture is a betrayal of the original term,
Mm.
Mhm.
in terms of like
Sure.
being on farm and getting involved. And there was a person at one of the CSA events that we had. So that our group with that voucher program started this CSA member ambassador program, where people who are members basically try to strong arm other people that they know into joining CSA and using the vouchers and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about being up in the Northeast involved in a CSA in the 90s, and how it was a radically different experience. It was significantly more, and if this means anything to you, like in a punk rock kind of sense, like a DIY, full DIY culture, where like share members are showing up to the farm and unloading 50-pound bags of cabbage, and they're like
Right.
making arrangements for drop-offs. It's more like a traditional old school cooperative, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like what Good Foods was a number of years ago, and other cooperatives are out in the Northwest and other places now, where it's this much more intensively socially integrated thing, as opposed to a mediated transaction at a different time of year. Again, that's not a criticism of this thing. I still participate in it. I think it's really good. It's a really good way of engaging. But to feel like you really have a share in something in a tangible way, having a little, what's the skin in the game, or some other
Right.
more metaphor, is
Yeah.
is an important distinction, and it's something that
Yeah.
we want to discuss sometimes.
I didn't even, to be completely transparent, I didn't know that. I mean, I run a flower CSA, so it's a little different, but I've worked with a lot of CSAs, and they've always been, maybe they support a little bit, they come out and there's like a community meal, but it's not even, it's more of the client is taking from the farm, giving all their money up front. And I didn't think I ever even realized that that's kind of where it came from, and has given me like 100 ideas in this
Sure.
very instant moment. Like, because I think that people want to get connected. I mean, we saw
Yeah.
that during the pandemic, that people want to have more of a connection to their food, and maybe they don't have time, and maybe it's just like not what it necessarily used to be. But I think that there's even like almost like a marketing opportunity there to allow people
Absolutely.
to be
Mhm.
involved. I've just
Yeah.
like 100 things have just happened in my brain.
Sure. The first CSA that I worked on, which this was like mid 2000s, 2007, something like that, in North Georgia, was relatively small. Like it was like 35 to 40 shares, something like that. And it was a very much like you get what you get, but it also had a requirement that 2 days out of the season, which it did split the season into two different shares, right? There was like a spring greens and like a fruits of the, or like, summer. The rest, the bigger chunk was the summer. And when you signed up for a share, you had to pick 2 days that you would come out on special days where
Mhm.
members could come out and be expected to come out
Hmm.
to partake or assist in the harvest, since that's like the biggest, labor sink or whatever. So working in that, every one of the two harvest days a week is when you would see like shareholders kind of show up and help out. And it was
Yeah.
pretty tight knit. It was also very easy for distribution. It was like we had a cooler and we
Mhm.
loaded X boxes into it, and they came and picked it up over the course of like the day,
Hmm.
and that was that.
This past year, I was a part of an herbal CSA. I think I've mentioned it before, but it's a collaboration between Among the Oaks and Sylvatica
Mm.
Forest Farm, and they do like it's like some teas, but also some like herbal like hydrosols and other kinds of like herbal medicinal products.
Mhm.
Super cool. But how they did it was like it was a quarterly CSA box, and each quarter you had an event associated with the pickup.
Mhm.
And a lot of times they would email us being like, we have this event on Saturday. Don't forget. Also, we're harvesting hibiscus, and that's like extremely labor intensive. If you've never done it before, it's insane. You have to like hand pick, thousands of tiny little buds, And so if you want, like, come out an hour early and just like hang out and chat and cut some hibiscus, which was really cool. So it's kind of like a bridge between those two, like they're providing the service we're taking, but also like, providing the opportunity for people to help out, which was cool.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Interesting.
people seem to really enjoy. I mean, it's not like they had to be there every harvest day. They picked those 2 days, and it would tend to be days that had, pretty killer weather, but they would be out there and being a part of it, right? And they always seemed very appreciative of that time. Like it forced them to take a break from their daily kind of, a lot of them were office or indoor workers, right? And they would
Mhm.
get to spend like a nice, like kind of chill morning on the farm or whatever. And it seemed to add a lot of value. Like it was definitely more
Yeah.
for them, because we would kind of have to be prepared to like take people and kind of, be with them while they're harvesting and kind of give them a little direction if they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, I like it gives it value. They're like, "Oh man, you do this every day?" Like it's not
Totally.
just you all playing, in the field.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, they're not like, I could get a bigger tomato at the grocery store. Instead,
yeah.
they're like, oh, right. Somebody had to go out and pick this.
Yeah, gives some
Well,
connection to that.
well, despite my and Josh's lamenting the forks
The
of
betrayal,
bygone radical roots of CSA and the transgressive
the
agricultural
destruction of
communities that
culture.
grew around it, CSA has, for a lot of better and probably some worse, gone much more mainstream than it
Yeah.
ever was in the past. And I
Mhm.
think that the punk rock DIY vibe partially thrives on exclusivity and nicheness, and so the idea of opening it up to more people has been really really cool. And part of that I think has been some of these events and things that have shown this level of support from state and federal partners that was, I mean, just frankly wasn't there before. It was too weird or it was too niche or whatever. Now seeing this, especially for small places like Kentucky with a lot of small farms, it's a really considerable portion of the income of some of the farms that we work with, and it's a
Mhm.
model that works for them. And there are
Totally.
a couple. Emily's been working with some of those partners to kind of rep this UKCCD side on some of these events that are coming up. And so, Emily, there's a month and there's a week. That's about all I have on my notes here.
Yeah. So, it's, we've been talking about like all the crazy variety of innovations that has been going on with CSAs. So the CCD, the Center for Crop Diversification that Brett, Josh, and I work for, is a part of this national CSA innovation network, where it's a group of like, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 different farmers and technical assistance organizations kind of working on these like issues surrounding CSAs that, are local issues, but shared across the whole nation, and just kind of thinking through, how do we reach more customers? How do we help farmers, market their products better, all different kinds of things. And something that came out of the CSA Innovation Network was this like national CSA week that happened. It's actually happening early and earlier every year, which is cool. So when it originally started out, I think it was like the end of March. And this year it's going from February 19th to the 25th. And it's, I think it's getting earlier because people are willing to sign up earlier for CSAs, even though they're not getting their products until later. People are excited and kind of want to get their foot in the door and that kind of stuff. But really what these are, like Brett was saying, is like this cool, like coordinated marketing effort. So it's like hundreds of farms across the country coming together to like spread the message of like what CSA is, why CSA is great for small farms in particular. Also really good for people who are interested in consuming local food and that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're a farmer out there interested in, kind of like learning more about what CSA is, or maybe you have a CSA and you're not really sure how to market it, these kinds of like big national and statewide campaigns can be like a really cool opportunity to, just kind of hop on there and like use these resources that were developed by people who have been doing research in this field for, decades now.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go into the National CSA Week a little bit more about like what it means to participate in it. So you can just sign up if you're a CSA farmer. You can sign up. It's totally free. You just go to the CSA Innovation Network website. And as a part of it, you'll get added to their map so people can search by state, all CSAs that are participating in this. And then they can kind of find your farm. And then also you'll get this really extensive media package that's completely customizable. You can download it to your computer, change out the photos, change out any text you want. But it just has these like coordinated messages about like, the benefits of CSAs and just kind of like some cool photo and caption ideas for you, some promotional emails, that you can send out to your own customers. Like we already have the template ready for you and that kind of stuff. Just kind of making it, really easy for you to just put out an entire, week or even multiple weeks worth of stuff on your site to get people interested in your CSA, which is cool.
And just something to draw a line to other cultural artifacts. If you are familiar with the phrase "got milk" or "where's the beef," or if you're familiar with Stephen Colbert's pistachio ads, if you're not, I'm sorry to bring that into your world, but that type of coordinated, and this pistachio ad's not really, but the other two backed by a different kind of federal funding and grower funding, but it has a real impact when you can get that kind of coordinated effort together. And so to see that at a national scale for CSA is like remarkable and really like applaudable or whatever. Like it's really cool coordinated effort by a relatively small group of talented, dedicated people. And so, yeah, huge shout out to that, because I think that is awesome. And I know we've participated and supported. And a couple of years ago, a team of folks went up on some SARE funding to visit with the Fair Share Coalition and some other groups and some of the people involved in the CSA Innovation Network. And it's just been really cool to see that growth, and that also coming along of organizations and funding to support it has been really neat.
Yeah. And, Kentucky has kind of like adapted this National CSA Week into our own CSA Week, which happens in March 4th to the 8th this year. And it's this collaboration between the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, OAK, the Organic Association of Kentucky, the Food Connection here at UK, the Kentucky Horticulture Council, and the Center for Crop Diversification, us. And really, and it's kind of similar in that, we have a couple of different templates and stuff that we send out to participating farms. But really what it is is using the media connections that all of these organizations have to promote the CSA farms that are participating. So they're all Kentucky Proud CSA farms, and they'll be shared out on all of our, social media channels and stuff, which, is reaching tens of thousands of people between all of those organizations. So it's a little bit different where it's like kind of these huge networks of organizations kind of, taking the time to promote these farms that are participating. And but I mean, it's been a really cool thing the past couple of years to see that grow too.
And as a
Josh, am I right?
reminder,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, I was going to say, as a reminder, this is veggie, but it's also meats and flour and herbal. Like
Mhm.
they've really
Yeah.
opened it up to anybody who's doing a
Value added
type of
products.
CSA. Yeah. Cool.
Josh, am I correct in saying there's a way to find some CSAs on a map somewhere or no?
Well, Emily brought up that one, but there used to be one that was local harvest, and it's still functional. I don't know how routinely it's updated. I think it's localharvest.org. That used to be what I used like a decade plus ago. And I
Yeah.
did, the site still loads and has CSAs, but there might be some out of date listed there if you're looking
Oh, and
for
you
some
meant there's one
nearby.
on the KDA site. That's the one that you mentioned, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
Emily?
one Emily mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That one I would assume is more like up to date. The local harvest one is kind of nationwide.
Yeah.
This CSA Innovation Network, not gonna lie, first time I've been on this website, but it looks really awesome. So if you're a farmer who's maybe thinking about CSA, but it feels really overwhelming, this has some really cool like short videos and interest like about planning the details and how to manage customer expectation. So CSAinnovationnetwork.org, and there's a UK logo on there, so we can advertise
Nice.
it, right? Like rock on right there. But yeah, there's some really cool
Wildly
ones like
branded. I
scrolling
mean,
through.
possible. Well, that's our tagline is wildly possible, but I riffed on it. I have a couple other thoughts about people, maybe producers who might be interested.
Yeah.
So one is we do have a publication that Tiffany Thompson, who was the
Oh
manager
yeah.
of the UK CSA for a number of years, wrote called CSA Economic Analysis. That's a publication available through the University of Kentucky. It's one of the best economic considerations of CSA. It goes through a lot of different of the budget items. It's a couple years old now, so some of the input costs might be higher, as we've covered in past episodes, but it is a really good, if you just Google CSA economic analysis UKY, it should come up as a first result. Another thing, and I'll maybe get your all's thoughts on this. If someone's starting out in growing stuff, if we have a Hort Biz Quiz, whatever, respondent who is filling this out, CSA is not where I would start in growing vegetables.
No.
And there's a number of reasons why. So I'm seeing the horror on all of your faces. Why would you say, like, what would be some of the reasons why CSA is better left to the more seasoned grower?
You got to deliver. Like even though they're in it with you, and if you have a failure of a crop, you still got to deliver something. And you can't keep delivering yellow squash every week, right? Like as the only thing. If your tomatoes die,
And
unless you're doing,
kohlrabi.
yeah, and kohlrabi, unless you're doing, the only exception I would say is like a winter or a fall CSA, but those people are usually really upfront. I did a winter CSA this year, which was awesome, but they were upfront. Like, and in the winter you're going to get greens, so you can expect salad mix every single week.
Right.
You're not getting tomatoes, you're getting those root crops and things like that. So that aside, you got to deliver, and you got to deliver a variety of things. And so I would say if you're a relatively new grower, maybe join up with someone else. So one thing we haven't mentioned, but is something that I think is starting to become a little more popular, is kind of this idea of a multi-farmer CSA.
Mhm.
So I've worked with one here at my extension office, but I've had people who have high tunnels, so they're really good, and they're really good at growing, tomatoes and some of those like specialty high tunnel crops that just do really well there. And then other people who are growing outdoors, or maybe they do mushrooms or flowers or whatever that is. And so they've joined up with these people and said, they say, Farmer A, you're going to bring all the tomatoes and all the cucumbers, and Farmer B is going to bring the watermelon and the potatoes or something like that. And so that can be kind of a good way to get started as well, if your attention to detail is there, but you got to deliver, and you got to deliver a good product, or else they're not going to come back and they're going to tell all their friends not to sign up. So
Yeah, you definitely want to know what you are doing before you get into it. And my advice for somebody, who feels confident in their ability would be to start small, start with like a very tiny group of people who are committed to this
start with
idea.
your mom's friends. Like,
Exactly. Like people, immediately, like short term, and make it just kind of like a little side project, aim small, kind of miss small, or
Mhm.
really targeted, like definitely if you're growing vegetables, the diversity is a big key. But if it's, say, some like an egg share or something like that, you could get away
Mhm.
with being pretty like narrowly defined.
Mhm.
Yeah, my sister and I are starting a farm business this year. And, we've been growing like for ourselves and for family members for years. But kind of our goal this year is just extremely small. Essentially, we just want to start out with a goal, maybe like in 3 years, doing like a full blown CSA.
Mhm.
But this year, kind of doing like month-long trials, of
Mm-hmm.
just like
Mhm.
5 people maybe, so we can kind of get like the flow and the cadence down, and like understanding
Yeah.
like what does it even
Totally.
mean to like get all this together every week, and like
Mm-hmm.
make sure our planting schedules are good and that kind of stuff. And just like really taking a lot of notes on those kinds of trials and see how they go.
Yeah,
Oh,
I've known a handful of people that have, they transitioned from being a market grower to like a 5 or 6 share CSA, and it, went really well for them, and they weren't
mhm.
like wildly stressed out, right?
Mhm.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And the
I
same is
think
true of veggies versus, flowers. I know a lot of flower farmers who do once a month type of things where, they really only have to rally for that 1 week.
Right.
Maybe they expand their reach and they deliver to other places because they're only driving there once a month. So they don't have, to be on a crazy route every single week. But also, sometimes there are things that are super fast. Like we know that lettuce mix in the spring, can bolt really quickly, or broccoli or whatever. So you may only do that, like Emily said, that 1 month or 6 week CSA of peonies or something that are really fast turnaround, and you just have your peony CSA or your cruciferous CSA or whatever. And that's okay. It's all about marketing. You don't have to pull out that 26 week CSA from the get go. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people find that a little bit more, if they're new to CSA, a little bit more tangible for them as well. Cause they're like, it's not 26 weeks of me having to make sure I'm there picking stuff up. They can kind of
Right.
dabble, and you can charge a little bit more per week, in my opinion. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, and they, last year I got it was one of those once a month
Mm-hmm.
flower CSAs. I got it as like a birthday gift for my sister, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
6 months, I think. And yeah, so it's like a totally different like marketing tactic, but really cool.
Usain Bolt would be a terrible lettuce variety name.
Mm,
Yes.
so fast.
And with that, transition to a follow-up question that I have for you all to pick your brains. So we said it's not necessarily for every producer. Again, I'm just working to get myself canceled by saying I don't particularly love going to farmers markets as a shopper, but I'll also say I don't think that CSA is right for all consumers necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
for all customers, for all community members. I think for a number of reasons, there are ways that, and that's why we have other markets and other
Mm-hmm.
ways of accessing things, is because not everybody wants to get it the exact same way. What would you all say are some of the, I'll put it in a different way besides the things that would disqualify. What are you, for you all, some of like the learning curves associated with being a CSA member? If for someone who's maybe not fully on board with, yes, let's figure out a way to cook fresh vegetables every night for dinner. What any thoughts
Picky
about that?
eaters. Anybody in your family who's a picky eater, whether it's you or you've got kids who won't eat something, not only do you have to figure out how to cook kohlrabi, which I can give you some great recipes, hit me up, but you got to have them eat it. And if people aren't eating what you're putting in front of them, that can be really irritating.
Well, and just learning how to deal with fresh stuff. I mean, that's not
Mhm.
always a given. I mean, there's lettuce that dies in my crisper drawer every single week, and it's sad. It's my emotional support lettuce, Alexis. I pull
I
it
have
out and it's brown and
spinach.
soggy, but just learning how to deal with that stuff and how to deal with it in a timely fashion so that you minimize waste on the consumer end.
Mhm.
That's a big thing that our family and consumer sciences agent on a county level is always working with people, and she helps me out some. But it's amazing how many people get involved in a CSA, and they, in some cases, even brought the stuff at the office because they said we don't know how to deal with this stuff. So
Right.
yeah, I guess we can't take that advantage, for granted that everyone is equipped to deal with a regular supply of fresh stuff that they have to break down and do something with. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say that's like probably the big litmus test is like, do you like trying to figure out what to do with produce if it's a produce CSA? And are you comfortable working with things that you haven't worked with before in the kitchen?
Hmm.
And do you have people in your household that will eat your mistakes?
Yeah. Yeah, or willing to, yeah, cover up for your mistakes. And I think that's where I really kind of missed the community portion of community supported ag. That was one of the things back in the late 90s. I'm telling on my age a little bit and how long I've been at Extension, but mid to late 90s, it seems like there was a lot more activities. Maybe there still are in certain operations, but there was a lot of effort that went into not only on farm like dinners and community events to cultivate community, but there was also classes on recipes on how to cook every single thing, that they may be getting in their CSA share. There was a lot more of
Mhm.
that going on
Mhm.
when the community was a bigger component of community supported agriculture. So I kind
Yeah.
of missed that component.
Sure. That's something that's nice about, I mean, when you get that group of people who are then having to work with kind of the same or similar vegetables throughout the year, and you have those like potluck events where people gather, there's a lot of animated exchange and, community teaching of each other of like, this is what we did with that. And it was awesome. And
Mhm.
recipe sharing and all that.
Yeah, and if you happen to be a CSA farmer out there that's feeling stressed out about finding customers, to buy your CSAs now, there are several organizations like, I know the NEP program at UK and also Oak put out some really awesome free recipe cards
Mhm.
for farmers that you can just go pick up from them and put in your CSA shares.
Yeah.
So like let's say that you're going to have cucumbers or whatever, kohlrabi or something. They have recipe cards, for like
Mhm.
Yeah.
really awesome, delicious things that you can just kind of throw in your bag. Kind of helpful.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes, a link to where you can find all those because there are tons of them, and they have like nutritional information on them as well as like a recipe. So we'll put that in the show notes. But if you want the actual, and if you're the kind of CSA, a lot of them send weekly emails. Hey, this is what's in your box. You can put a link to that, or if
Mhm.
you want physical ones, your extension office, every extension office, man, listen, my storage room is full full of recipe cards, and I promise you your local extension office would love nothing more for you to show up and be like, can I have 20 of a cucumber recipe, 20 recipe cards? They will hand you a whole box. Be prepared. But please go help them out and sharing that. But we'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's such a great point, Emily. Thank you.
There was kind of to that end, like that CSA that I worked at in North Georgia. They were also associated with like a farm to table place, and that was the other distribution site was in town. They had some storage space in the walk in or whatever. And one of the things they would do because they were so closely linked is they would have a dish that they would then provide the recipe for out of the stuff that would come in the box on a given week. I mean, it was like marketing genius, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that a lot of producers, CSA is one part of their marketing mix.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, you'll hear that they'll prioritize CSA first, so the CSA folks get the highest quality. If there's a shortage, they get it first, etc. But there are a lot of folks who kind of market in multiple different locations because they want to reach different customer bases. And another part of that earlier, the discussion of like starting small, is that if you start in other market channels, it gives you a chance to build your brand a little bit. So when you go to try to recruit people into your CSA, that you have some. It's not, you're not saying I've never done this before, but please give me your money up front to do this. It can be a helpful part of that. Yeah, and I think CSA is for a lot more people than maybe realize it, and especially with a lot of the adaptations that have been made. But I do think, at any given point, we're going to have a lot of folks who prefer to get their vegetables one way or prefer to get their food one way, and the ways that the promotion of this to larger audiences and the adaptability of the producers has been really positive, I think, for expanding access and expanding visibility of a really cool market channel. So there's is it Kentucky Proud Week, or is it month, or is it what's the
Yeah, it's Kentucky Proud Week. I think it used to be a month-long
okay,
promotional thing, and now it's just condensed into 1 week.
cool.
Yeah, and it's March 4th through 8th. So if you're a CSA farm, the date to sign up will have already passed by the time this episode airs, but still, worth getting onto. There's a CSA in Kentucky Facebook page that anyone can be a part of. And it's, a really good way to get inspiration for ways to market your CSA and kind of see what other farms in the state are doing with theirs. And yeah, and that one, in beginning of March.
And if you're in Kentucky and you are farming anything, sign up to be Kentucky Proud. It's cheap, or it's not. And by cheap, I mean it's free and it's easy.
That's kind of cheap, man.
I've ever heard.
It's really easy to sign up. I mean, you can get signed up in, it takes 15 minutes to fill out. And every year once you fill it out once, every year they go, everything's still good. And you go, yeah, or you add in your changes. It's really easy. And it allows you to have access to a lot of like grant funding and things along those lines. So I always tell people there's no reason not to be Kentucky Proud. And they do help market you. So it's, kind of a free marketing. There's just a lot of things involved, whether you're doing CSA or they even have a Kentucky Proud wedding vendors section. So they've really opened it up to a lot of different style of farms and agritourism and things along those lines. So big shout out, and we're really proud of Kentucky Proud.
Can you rent like a tux with like Kentucky Proud logos all over it? Like,
you can probably get a pop grant for that. So
I bet you can get that on Etsy.
yeah.
It's on Etsy. Just look.
I bet Josh would allow some promotional funding for that.
Okay.
Makes perfect sense.
If he's listening, he just cringed. So awesome. Well, yeah, I think that's awesome. We'll kind of close this out, but Emily, I know you've said a couple of the dates a couple times, but just to round out the episode, remind us of kind of those CSA dates.
Yeah, so the National CSA Week, the one that, you get like the huge array of different media coming in like a media package to you, is from February 19th to 25th. And there's no deadline to sign up for that one. So if you're a CSA farmer, you can sign up today and get the package immediately in your inbox, which is really cool. And then for the Kentucky Proud CSA Week, that one is March 4th through the 8th.
Awesome.
Cool beans.
Any last words from Bald Boys and our Ray about CSAs?
It's good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I really appreciate you coming and sharing stuff with us and being so involved with the it's good to have a CCD team person involved with that important promotional work. And just once again, so glad to have you on the pod.
We love you,
I appreciate
Emily.
it.
Thank
Love
you.
you guys. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. Remember, you can always shoot us an email at hortculturepodcast@l.uky.edu. You can also follow us on Instagram and shoot us a DM if you have any ideas or thoughts, or you're just wanting to send some well wishes and you want to tell us how awesome Emily is and that you want her back on all the time. You could totally do that. Hortculture Podcast is our handle there. We'd also love it if you left us a review if you are enjoying your time. It helps other people find us, so it just is really sharing the love there. So we appreciate you being here today, and we hope that as we grow this podcast, you will grow with us and join us next week. Have a good one.